This man put 1 million miles on a KLR650, riding it around the world 4 times. That thing lasted 1 million miles. This bike is so good that after using a variety of motorcycles over 100 years, the US military chose the KLR650 and even paid to modify it just to keep being able to use it more, over the Harley WLA or the Harley MT500 to the Kawasaki DLR250 D8 and the Christini AWD. After the KLR650 was used for years, including during Desert Storm, the US military hired Hayes Diversified Technologies to modify the KLR650, using a KLR650 as a basis to make a motorcycle that could run on diesel. You know, so your bike can run on the same fuel as your Humvees. That is so cool. Despite all this, after 31 years of production, Kawasaki pulled the plug on it. The uproar must have been too loud because just 4 years later, they brought it back. So this bike has been around longer than I've been alive. So what's it like today? I recently rode one of the latest versions. But before we get into that, let's get into the question. For a bike that just won't die, how is something like that born? So it's based on the 1984 to 1986 KLR600, and the KLR650 was introduced in 1987. If you looked at it today, would you think it's an adventure bike or a dual sport? Then, and to this day, Kawasaki actually classifies it as a dual sport. But since the beginning, it seems to have always been treated as an adventure bike. One reviewer in the 80s even called it a responsibly sized adventure bike. It had an update in 1990 where it was made to look like a Paris-Dakar racer. They called it the Tengai, which in Japanese means the end of the sky. The Tengai was supposedly introduced to compete with the Honda Africa Twin, the Ducati Multistrada, but cost a lot less. Compared to those, it was affordable and lighter and more basic, which meant that that'd be easier to work on, just making it the perfect dad bike, and it garnered a cult following. Then, after 30 years, Kawasaki halted production in 2018. No one knew if they'd bring it back. Dealerships brought in as many 2018 models as possible, thinking that there would be demand for years to come. And they were right. So, Kawasaki brought it back from the dead 4 years later. Hold on a second. You know those clips you've been seeing me in this video looking like a soldier? I'll explain. For the record, I'm not a cop and I'm not in the military. I'm just trying to learn how to ride like them. And wanting to make videos to show people that riders aren't just hooligans and bar hoppers. There are heroes too. So I flew to California with the man who's been training Marines in a 2-week dirt bike program to show you what that's like. And that's in last week's video. Flying to take classes to show in videos is expensive, so shout out to today's sponsor, Breakfree. More on them in a bit. For last week's video, I also interviewed a retired Marine combat motorcycle instructor to ask him what it was like to ride KLR650s during Desert Storm. He had a bunch of cool stories about what it's like riding in a military convoy, like leading the way through a minefield at night using infrared chem light sticks, which are like glow sticks but not visible to the naked eye, only visible with vision goggles. Since you're more than likely not riding your KLR at night trying to hide from enemy fire, but rather on your next off-road adventure or riding to work, you need tricks to be seen by those you want to see you too, like cars. That's where Breakfree comes in. I've used this light on the back of my helmet for years before they ever became a sponsor on this channel. It flashes when you're stopping or slowing down wire-free, and it comes in white and black. It has these little mounting brackets that you can put on a variety of helmets, so you can just switch it and move it between helmets. It's ready to go out of the box. You don't need to connect it to anything. The technology in it is called accelerometer and gyrometer, so it just senses your movement. Use discount code DOODLE10. And before I forget, I actually have another discount code for you. Those sunglasses you saw me wearing in those military clips with the KLR, they're actually shatterproof. If you see or feel them in person, you might think that they're just some thin plastic, like what's the big deal about them? Maybe you're used to your heavy, chunky metal plastic sunglasses. But under your helmet, thin is what you want. They're made to be ultra thin, so you don't even feel it in your helmet. And unlike glass or other plastic sunglasses, if you're ever in an accident, these are made to not break into a ton of sharp shards right near your eyes. That's discount code DOODLE10, so shout out to Flying Eyes for being another sponsor of this channel and making these videos possible. So back to the KLR rising from the dead. Out of the ashes it rose anew. It came with electronic fuel injection to replace the old carburetor. They added ABS. They added digital instruments. They improved stability by stretching out the swing arm and lengthening the wheelbase. The Adventure version came with lockable hard cases. They made the windshield taller and adjustable. They changed the headlights to LED headlights. They added more power to the charging system. Unlike the 80s, today between our phone, our heated gear, GPS systems, navigation systems, we got a lot of stuff to plug in these days. They beefed up the frame to improve the load-bearing capabilities. And all this definitely had the KLR650 gain some weight. The 1987 version weighed about 370 pounds. And that's compared to today's 460 to 480 pounds, depending on which of the 4 KLR650 styles you get. But I'd say that's all muscle, you know? It's not fat. I mean, the KLR650 tank can do over 250 miles. Today, 3 versions are available. Since a majority of adventure riders actually ride about 80% on the street, Kawasaki made sure to think of those riders in these styles. So there's the KLR650 and the KLR650S, which is the low version. That's the white KLR650 you see me on in the clips. It's about 2.2 inches lower seating position than the KLR650. So that's done by reducing the wheel travel and having a thinner seat. And then there's the KLR650 Adventure. So for an extra $1,000, you can get ABS, factory installed side cases, LED auxiliary light set, engine guards, tank pads, a DC power outlet, and a USB socket, as well as the adjustable windscreen. Although it's adjustable in 2 positions and you have to remove 4 6mm Allen bolts to do it, but it's adjustable. And after all these years, there are complaints. It's still just 1 cylinder. Maybe on the upper end all around the world that's not that obvious, but on US highways, for instance, that thumper is very noticeable. Unlike my Triumph Tiger or this Honda Transalp, I'm not gonna talk about the KLR feeling smooth at all. And some say that it's heavy for a single-cylinder dual sport, which is what Kawasaki classifies the KLR650. But let's be honest, the rest of us, we think of this as an adventure bike. And weighing around 460 to 487 pounds, depending on which model you get, that's less than my Triumph Tiger or the Honda Transalp. But it is also less power than those 2. Another con I'd say is that it could use another gear. So six gears instead of 5 would be nice. It just feels like you need a little bit more power in that upper end, at least at US highway speeds. And yeah, sure, most of us, we don't want to ride highways. We want to avoid that as much as possible, but let's be honest. How often are we mostly in a rush and just don't have time to avoid highways as much as we would rather do that? The most common complaint I found during my internet rabbit hole search on this is the plastic hard cases, that they're a little small and can break easily. One person talked about how it just cracked with just a tip over while parked on the street. But after watching Chris from Scrambler Stories break his leg with some hard cases that went down off-road, I go soft bag anyways. I will fight you on that one. Another complaint is that it doesn't come with cruise control and that the dash is pretty basic. You've got your clock and your fuel gauge, but there's no temperature reading, there's no gear position indicator or miles per gallon. But I guess those things are expected for a dual sport motorcycle. If I see a windscreen, I'm saying it, I'm calling it an adventure bike. My interest with these bikes really started with the gateway motorcycle that no one warned me about. You can watch the 10,000 mile review on my Tiger right over here.